Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be cracking open Trillion Dollar Coach. I think a lot of our listeners, want to unlock the wisdom of Silicon Valley's, secret weapon, Bill Campbell, but without, spending hours and hours reading, right?
Right. And that's where we come in, hopefully. We've gone through it and kind of synthesized, the key takeaways from this fascinating book so you can get right to the good stuff.
Okay, I'm excited to dive in. So Bill Campbell, now, he might not be like a household name like Steve Jobs or the Google founders, but he was, their coach, their confidant, really kind of their secret weapon, you could say. And this book really dives into, how this Steeltown football coach ended up shaping like the very DNA of Silicon Valley, which is fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. It's a fascinating journey. And, I think one of the things that's so striking about, Campbell and his story is that his success wasn't about like some complex algorithm or some, secret formula. Really, it boiled down to some pretty timeless principles. And I think it all starts with this really simple but powerful belief, and that is it's the people.
It's the people. Yeah, we hear that a lot throughout the book. Like, what did he actually mean by that, though? How did that translate into his actual coaching style?
So for Campbell, it's the people really meant recognizing that, ultimate success, whether you're coaching a football team or you're leading, a tech giant, it hinges on, building strong, empowered teams.
Yeah.
So Campbell really, he believed in putting people first, prioritizing those one-on-one meetings, fostering open communication, because he knew that when people feel, value, when they feel respected, they're capable of achieving, really extraordinary things.
Yeah, and he really walked the walk, too. I'm thinking about that story in the book about, how he turned down a call from Steve Jobs, because he was in the middle of coaching a middle school football practice. I mean, talk about priorities, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it wasn't about being, dismissive, right? It was about being present. And Campbell was so good at that. He gave his full attention to whomever was in front of him, whether it was, a tech titan like Steve Jobs or, a middle schooler on the football field. And I think that ability to be present, to really, listen and connect, that was really key to how he built trust and unlocked the potential of everyone around him.
That's such a powerful point. It's so easy to get caught up in like the titles and the status and all that, but he saw the person.
He did.
Okay, so we were talking about putting people first. What other like management principles did Campbell really live by?
So another big one, he was a huge advocate for leading based on what he called first principles.
First principles. Okay, that sounds kind of complicated, but I have a feeling it's actually pretty simple, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's really about kind of stripping away, all the noise and getting back to the fundamental truths of a situation. So the book gives this great example of Mike McHugh, who was at Tell Me Networks, and he was facing this huge decision with AT&T. They were offered this like really lucrative deal, but it meant like abandoning their core business model. And so Campbell, he advised McHugh to focus on those first principles. What were the foundational truths that had made Tell Me successful in the first place?
So it's like remembering your roots, like remembering the core values that drive your success.
Yeah.
Even when you're faced with like these tempting distractions, these shiny objects.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not always easy, right? The allure of a big payout, like in McHugh's case, it can kind of cloud your judgment, right? But Campbell, he understood that, straying from those core principles, even for a big reward, it can lead you down the wrong path.
Ugh. Yeah, that's such a valuable lesson, especially, in the fast-paced world of Silicon Valley, where it's so easy to get like swept up in the next big thing, the next, billion-dollar idea.
Absolutely. And this principle, like many of Campbell's teachings, it applies just as much to, our own personal lives as it does to, the business world.
100%. 100%. Okay, so we've got it's the people, we've got lead with first principles. What else can we glean from like Bill Campbell's management playbook?
Well, for one, he had, a very particular way of dealing with what he called aberrant geniuses.
Aberrant geniuses.
Hmm.
Okay, I think I know the type. Incredibly talented, but maybe a little rough around the edges. How did Campbell suggest kind of like handling these unique individuals?
Yeah, so Campbell, he recognized that, these individuals, they were incredible assets.
Right.
But, he also emphasized the importance of, managing them in a way that, benefited the entire team, not just the individual.
Right.
Because he knew that, a single disruptive personality could really derail an entire organization.
Right.
It was about, setting those clear expectations, providing that honest feedback, even when it was tough to hear, and just making sure that those individuals, they understood the importance of, teamwork, respect, all of that.
Yeah, easier said than done, though, right? I mean, can only imagine, like, those conversations could get, a little intense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, Campbell, he wasn't afraid of a little, confrontation. He believed in being direct, being honest, even when it was, uncomfortable. And he called this, radical candor. And it was all about, giving that feedback from a place of genuine care, not criticism.
Yeah, there's that word again, trust. Seems to be like a recurring theme in like Campbell's whole approach.
You hit the nail on the head. Trust was, really paramount to Campbell. It wasn't assumed, it was earned, carefully cultivated over time.
And that trust fueled some of the most like iconic partnerships in tech, right? I mean, you think about like his relationship with Steve Jobs, it's legendary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they had their share of, disagreements for sure, but their bond, was built on this foundation of, mutual respect and trust. And Campbell was, fiercely loyal to Jobs, even during, those well-documented kind of tumultuous periods, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've got people first, we've got first principles, radical candor, a whole lot of trust. Anything else we're missing from like Campbell's leadership playbook here?
Well, he also really believed in the power of teams, right? And he had this saying, solve the team, then the problem.
Solve the team, then the problem. So it's like get the team dynamics right before you even like try to tackle the task at hand.
Exactly, exactly. And the book highlights this great example of there was this conflict between Google and Apple. It was over some, phone features, I believe. And it was, kind of a tense situation, right? You had these two like titans, kind of on a potential collision course. But, Campbell, he didn't really get bogged down in like all the technicalities of, the dispute. Like he focused on the people involved, right? Like he made sure that the lines of communication were open, both sides felt heard, felt respected.
Yeah, it sounds like he was like a master mediator almost.
He was.
Right.
And his priority was so clear. It was about preserving that relationship between these two companies, even when, their products were at odds. And it's just a great example, I think, of how, putting people first can often lead to a more sustainable solution, even in the heat of conflict.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Sometimes taking a step back from like the immediate problem and focusing on that human element can actually lead to, better outcomes in the long run.
Oh.
Okay, so we've talked about trust, we've talked about teamwork, even a little bit of tough love in there. But there's another kind of surprising element to Campbell's leadership style that,
Right.
really struck me as I was reading the book. And it's a word you don't often hear in, the cutthroat world of Silicon Valley, love.
Love. You're kidding. Tell me more about that.
I know, right? But the book really emphasizes that this idea of love, not romantic love, of course, but this idea of love was like central to Campbell's entire approach. Like he deeply, deeply cared for the people he worked with.
That makes sense. I mean, we've seen that thread, I think, throughout all of his principles. But how did he actually, how did he express that care?
Well, he had this very, this very unique, often hilarious way of showing affection. The book actually includes like a list of top 10 Billisms, which are these like trademark sayings of his that were, sometimes a little rough around the edges, but they always, always came from a good place.
Give me an example. What's like a classic Billism?
One that stands out is, "You're as dumb as a post." Not exactly your traditional term of endearment.
Definitely not. But I get it. It's like that, the gruff but loving coach, right? Who, pushes you to be your best.
Exactly. And people loved him for it. They saw past like the bluster and they recognized, the heart of gold. Like this was a man who genuinely cared about their well-being, about their success.
And that authenticity, it's infectious, right? Like he created this atmosphere where people felt comfortable, being themselves, quirks and all. And I think it reminds us, that leadership isn't about, fitting into some like perfect mold. It's about being genuine and building trust through that, through that genuine connection.
100%. 100%. Okay, so you've seen how Campbell, really valued community within teams. But his commitment to building community extended far beyond the boardroom, didn't it?
It did. It did. Campbell was incredibly generous with his time, with his connections, always willing to lend a helping hand.
Yeah, the book mentions how he helped Susan Wojcicki. She's the current CEO of YouTube.
Yeah.
But he helped her, secure an invitation to this like exclusive tech conference. And this was like back when she was just starting out.
Exactly, exactly. He saw her potential, and he used his influence to open doors for her. And it's a great example, I think, of how even those, small acts of generosity can have this like ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Shaping careers and ultimately, changing the world.
Yeah, it's like that saying, lift as you climb. Campbell, he understood the importance of using his position to elevate others and create those opportunities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this wasn't just about, grand gestures. Campbell was also known for like his everyday acts of kindness, his support, always willing to go the extra mile for those in his circle.
Speaking of going the extra mile, there's one more kind of concept from the book I want to make sure we touch on here, and that's this idea of loving the founders. Campbell had this deep, deep respect for entrepreneurs, for those brave enough to take those risks, to pursue their vision.
That's an interesting concept, loving the founders. It's easy to get kind of caught up in the day-to-day operations of, running a company, but, Campbell never lost sight of that spark that ignited it all.
Exactly. Exactly. He understood that, founders, they bring this very unique energy, this unique perspective. And he was, fiercely dedicated to supporting them, even as their companies grew, even as their roles evolved.
Yeah, the book talks about how, he was a very staunch advocate for Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And this was even when, some board members had, doubts about Bezos's leadership style.
Yeah, he recognized Bezos's, brilliance and fought really hard to ensure that he had the freedom to pursue his vision. Campbell understood that, sometimes you have to trust the gut instincts of those who see like a different future, even when it goes against, conventional wisdom.
And while I think it's safe to say that Bezos, with Campbell's guidance, certainly proved those doubters wrong.
100%. 100%. And that's, I think, a really powerful message for, anyone in a leadership position. It's about, nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive to innovate, to push boundaries, even as a company, grows and evolves.
Yeah.
It's about creating a culture where people, they feel empowered to take risks, to share their ideas, and know that those ideas will be valued. It's about fostering that magic, that magic that happens when brilliant minds come together with like a shared vision and the freedom to actually, create.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. And that's the essence, really, of Bill Campbell's legacy, isn't it? I mean, he understood that, success, it wasn't just about, algorithms or profit margins, right? It was about people. It was about connection and that courage to really, dream big.
We've explored Trillion Dollar Coach today, and we've really kind of uncovered some of Campbell's key principles, right? Is the people leading with first principles, embracing radical candor, and really just building that trust as like the foundation, for everything. And we've also seen how, his love for his people and his belief in their potential, that really fueled, his very unique approach to leadership.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder, I think, that leadership, it isn't about, wielding power. It's about empowering others. It's not about having all the answers, but it's about asking the right questions, right? And creating that environment where, where the best answers can really emerge.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, I have to ask, like, what's the one thing that our listeners should like take away from Bill Campbell's playbook? What's the like one,
That's simple. That's simple. Ask yourself this. How would applying even just one of Campbell's principles, how would that change your work? How would that change your leadership?
Yeah, maybe it's being more intentional about building trust within your team, or embracing that radical candor in your feedback, or maybe it's about tapping into that love the founders mentality and nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit within your organization.
Exactly. It's about finding what resonates with you, right? Your leadership style, and then putting it into practice.
Yeah, because even small changes, but applied consistently, can lead to like really remarkable results.
Absolutely. Campbell's principles, they weren't about like these rigid formulas, They were about, these timeless truths. They were about connecting with people, on a human level and really inspiring them to achieve greatness.
That's the heart of it all, isn't it? The $1 trillion coach. It's more than just like a business book. It's a guide to, you know, it's a guide to leading with heart, building those lasting relationships and really making a difference in the world.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the best leaders are also the best human beings.
Uh,
Those who care deeply,
yeah.
support fiercely and inspire those around them to really, to reach their full potential.
And that's a legacy worth striving for, isn't it? That's it for our deep dive into $1 trillion Coach. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.